Hello and welcome to Everywoman. I'm Shuli Ghosh. On the show this week, pain, infertility, even death. Why female genital mutilation still goes on despite the law. Dancing to the beat of war, the Lebanese performers who refuse to be crushed by conflict. And updates from around the world, how women are battling in politics. It's a disturbing statistic. Almost 130 million women around the world have had their genitalia forcibly mutilated. It's a practice commonly found in African countries, but also in parts of Asia and the Middle East. Female genital mutilation, or FGM, is barbaric. It involves cutting off part or all of the labia and clitoris and is often done without anaesthetic. Despite laws banning it in more than a dozen countries, young girls are still suffering pain, shock, infection and, on occasion, death. February the 6th marked the International Day Against Female Genital Mutilation, and the UN has now launched a multi-million-dollar programme to reduce the practice by 40% over the next 7 years. Well, I'm joined now by Nahid Toubia, President of Research Action and Information Network for the Bodily Integrity of Women. Nahid, thank you very much indeed for joining us. First of all, what do you think about this UN plan? Do you think it's going to work?
Surely the short answer is no. Having said that, though, I think some of these campaigns have a function other than actually reducing it to 40%. The reason I say no is because while there is a good intentions, there is no clarity as to how exactly they will implement methods to reduce it to 40%. And of course, the amount of money is nowhere near sufficient to produce that kind of effect. However, the positive side of all this is it keeps the issue alive. It injects, obviously, some resources in it, both human and financial. And it also signals a seriousness at the level of the United Nations and in the international community that is very important to keep the momentum going, a momentum that's already started but needs to constantly be refed and regenerated.
But of course it is rooted very firmly in cultural beliefs, isn't it? It's very hard to discourage.
It's something that happens to women, to girls. It has to do with their sexuality. It has to do with insurance of society, the family, that the girls' genitals have somehow been controlled. You're talking about the African continent, the one continent where bride price is fundamental to the economy of Africa. Forget about even gender issues. Of course, it's very steeped in women's position in society and how women's bodies and trading women in marriage is fundamental to the primitive African economy. I'm not talking about primitive African society, I'm talking about economy. Without bride price, African economy would collapse.
OK, Nahid, well, stay with us because we want to illustrate the scale of the problem. In Guinea, 99% of women have been subjected to genital mutilation. In Egypt, it's 97%. In Senegal, the figure is lower, 28%. But the introduction of laws banning FGM in around 16 countries across Africa seems to have made little difference. However, as Everywoman discovered, attitudes are slowly changing.
I used to cut the girls early in the morning, on a Saturday or a Sunday. When I cut the girls, I wore a ceremonial outfit. After the cutting, I washed the girls and took them home. If the girls had problems, we treated them with traditional medicine. I thought it was important to do it, because we have been told that a girl who doesn't do it is not pure, is not clean. She is not a mature adult. So in order for a girl to be respected in the community, she must be cut.
This is a clinic of obstetrics and paediatrics. We practice general medicine and a little bit of surgery. From time to time we see women come to give birth who are cut. Women who are cut don't have any sensitivity, so they won't look for other men. They don't desire, they don't have sensitivity to sexual relations. We must tell these women that if you're cut, you will not know love. The real origin of this cutting came from men in order to colonize women.
I was cut when I was 7 years old. We were cut with a razor blade. The pain was really intense. 3 or 4 people held the girl who was being cut. They held us here, here and here. They cut us without anesthetic. They cut the flesh right off. I have 3 daughters. And 2 have been cut. At the time, I didn't think it was a bad practice. It was tradition, so I did it. That I let it happen was wrong. I manage the guilt I have by speaking out.
Massivan Kumi wanna hear you say woyo, woyo, woyo. Boy, je sais ce que tu penses de moi. Boy, je sais ce que tu dis de moi. Boy. On a formé le groupe là parce qu'en fait on avait des choses à dire. Dañu amone envie amna affaire yu ñu doon déranger ci société bi.
We started the group because of issues in our society. These troubled us. We wanted to talk about them. Our group, Alif, is feminist. I was cut when I was 6 years old. I bled a lot and often fainted. And I still can't bear to see blood. Every time I see blood, I faint. I wanted to study medicine, but I couldn't stand the sight of blood. It's a very traumatic thing and definitely should be stopped.
Well, Dr. Nahid Tubia is still with us. Nahid, clearly cutting in this way has a very profound and traumatic result on these young girls. Are you encouraged that some of the younger generation are now speaking out against this practice?
I know it's not an all rosy picture, but we are not in the 1960s. We are today have gone a long way into uplifting the cover and the silence on this issue. There's been many organizations and groups working on it. And it's difficult. It's social change. It's not going to happen overnight.
What about governments and the authorities, though? We know that there's legislation in place to prohibit and prevent this practice, but are there actually prosecutions going on? Are people being brought to justice for this?
Very little. It's partly because governments are sort of are between a stone and a hard place, or a rock and a hard place. On the one hand, the international consensus, including within Africa, the regional consensus is that they should pass laws. However, they have to appeal to the common sentiment of their people, and of course the majority of people, especially men, are very much for it, and a lot of women too. So they also have to tread very carefully. There has been some cases and some experiments, I would say, of bringing people to justice, particularly in Burkina Faso. So in Burkina, they have a hotline where if somebody knows somebody's going to be circumcised, they might call the hotline. The police might come. They don't do it every day, but they would, have a police raid on the circumcision. And then a few cases were taken to court and then were publicized highly in the media as a way of deterrent for the bigger population.
And one of the worrying trends is that when you tell these people about the health risks, they don't stop doing it. They just take their daughters to clinics to have it done medically.
Absolutely. I think the health risk message should be part of other messages and other actions, but on its own, which what people used for a long time, it just doesn't work. And it has such an important function socially, economically, as I said, in the dynamic of how society operates. So what they lose by stopping it is much more than what potential of physical harmful effects. So as you said, then logically they say, okay, let's just get some more resources and some more money and take it to somebody who can do it cleaner or safer or whatever, because the underlying reason is not being addressed.
Do you think, are you confident that eventually this barbaric practice will be rejected by these communities, or is that still a long way off?
Surely I have to use one word that is extremely essential in any effort to counter FGM, whether it's deliberate action or whether it happens as society evolves anyway. It's women's empowerment. Women do it to themselves, women do it to their children as a way of gaining partial power in a situation where they're very disempowered. So for us to ask women to stop it or not to do it and take the risk, the higher risk of not doing it to their daughter, is actually by finding a way to empower women, first through information, but sometimes through income generation. They have to literally become more able to negotiate a better position in society. And they also have to negotiate with their societies as to how we can stop this. That has been the approach that's worked best. You have to act through the women, through empowering them.
Nahid, I think you're absolutely right. It is a very distressing practice. Thank you very much indeed for sharing your thoughts with us.
Thank you very much.
Coming up after the break, bullets and ballet. The dancers who never stopped performing despite the civil war in Lebanon and who've now won international acclaim. That's in just a couple of minutes.